back to the Berg Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And so we're talking today a little bit about one of our core values and something that kind of taking a little bit of a different look at or a deeper dive on. And we're talking about the core value, act as an owner, and what it means in some places where it's went right well and some places where maybe it hasn't gone as well as we would have liked.
Yeah, I mean, Ford, like, can you start with where that sort of came from? Like, as a core value, obviously, I understand sort of how you operate and what you were thinking, but what's the core of it? You know, where does it come from?
I think it's all tied back to taking pride in your work, basically. Like, no matter what your position is, you know, how would you do it if it was yours? And, you know, if everyone does that, you know, jobs are successful, people are successful, promotions happen, things of that nature. Because, you know, if you treat it like a job and aren't trying to do the best you can because it's yours, you know, it's going to be a struggle. And so the point of this was to mean that, you know, hey, like, doesn't matter what you're doing, you know, you're not going to put something together faulty because it's not if it's yours and it's your house, you know, you're going to make sure it's done right. Same type of mentality is what we're going for with that act as an owner thing. And as you know, said, we've had some successes. I think a lot of it is inside the person. You know, we had to put these on the wall to kind of help guide some things, but at the same time, like, people that are that way. And some people can learn it and some people it's just not for them. I mean, I think, you know, we have some great people that have taken it and run with it. And, you know, the other times that we, you know, I think it's also part of, like, not micromanaging, because, you know, if you're acting like an owner and doing the best you can, you know, you don't need someone watching over you and making sure you're doing it right because you're trying to do it right for yourself, because that's just the type of work that, you know, you want to produce.
So, and from my perspective, you know, not being the owner, right? Like Ford's saying where he came up with it as the owner. And for me, it means those things, but it has like there's a little bit of a different connotation. Like you can use it for me personally in 3 or 4 different ways, right? Like you can act like an owner in the sense that you are trying to make it as good as it can possibly be, in that you want everyone to see how successful it is, right? How good of a job you can do, right? That when somebody drives by the site, all the equipment is lined up exactly the way it's supposed to be, and it's all cleaned up, and it doesn't look messy, and it's not broken, and you're presenting a product that is really positive, right? You could be like, and that's an owner cares, like they don't want their equipment all beat up, you know what I mean? Like, just like you would take care of your own car, right? But it also could mean act like an owner, like an owner, like we always said about farmer mentality. An owner doesn't go home. Like an owner finishes a job. Like an owner gets things done. An owner doesn't stop because it's 4:00, right? They stop because it's the right time to stop. And I want to be careful there, because I'm not saying you work till midnight. I'm saying you stop at the most opportune time that's most beneficial to the flow of the job and the situation. You know, so there's a lot of ways that you can act like an owner. And the other thing is, it's really hard because, you know, you say you take care of it like it's your house. And I think about like my own house, you know, and they say about, like, you know, the shoemaker, the saying about like the shoemaker, the kids don't have great shoes because he makes shoes all the time. He's not going to take the time to do it, you know, and you're not, like, when we go to interview people or bring them on board, we don't like can I take a tour of your house? You know, like, but there are little things Ford has always said, like, you know, you get into somebody's car and you can see, like, what does the car look like, you know, and it reminds me of something my mom used to tell me, that when she was young and she did, when she was in like high school and college, she taught migrant workers in South Jersey. So in like the Pine Barrens where they grow all the blueberries and cranberries. And it was cyclical. You know, the people would come in and they'd work for 3 months and then they'd leave. And they would move into these temporary houses with dirt floors. And she said, I'd go in and I'd be teaching the kids in these little things in the summer, and their houses were perfectly clean. They would be sweeping the floor, but the floor was dirt, you know, but they would be sweeping. And so there was like no loose dirt, you know, and I grew up in the Pine Barrens, it's sand, you know, and so you don't have to have a lot or it doesn't have to be the shiniest thing, but it's how you care for it, right? How you care for, whether it be the job or the responsibility or the piece of equipment or any of those things. And so for me, it's sort of multifaceted in what it means, but it's acting like what you're doing is bigger than just the job you're doing, because it matters for the next job and the next job and the next job. And sort of that's where I go with that act like an owner thing.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think there are a lot of attributes of people who act like an owner. I think that's what you're kind of describing in some ways.
Trying.
But like, I think we know, like if we're going to do like a root cause analysis here, right? Like at the root of what it means to act like an owner, I think are all the things that you're describing like boiled down into kind of like integrity and accountability.
They do.
Right?
They do. And they boil down to like,
yeah.
You and I always talk about that. I say like, do the next right thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just do the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, like what's the right thing? Do that.
Sure. Because I think I know I think you're when you act like an owner and you're taking responsibility for the things that you've been put in charge of, I think you act in a specific way. If you're waiting for someone else to take action, or you're waiting for someone else to, make the next decision, or you're waiting to be told what to do next, then you're probably not acting like an owner.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of, in my mind, what we were describing when we came up with the act like an owner. It wasn't, how hard you're going to work, because I think you can work really hard and make no progress, right? I think it wasn't necessarily like, does it always look shiny and pretty? Because sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's ugly and dirty. But I think it is a lot about taking accountability, taking responsibility for the things that you've been asked to be accountable for, and then having integrity in your actions, and not taking shortcuts, not looking for the easy way out, looking to make sure that the job gets done complete and to the extent that it should for our owners, that are our clients that we're working for ourselves, for our reputation, all those things.
Yeah, and you dumb it down, Brian. Do you think that you can like take it back from ownership to just like how we in modern society use the word own?
Yeah.
Right. Like you have to own your behavior. You have to own your actions. You have to own your, you know what I mean? And so there's a piece of it that what you're getting to is that each piece of this, like you wouldn't just wait for someone else to tell you to do something if you owned that piece.
Right. Yeah. It's possession, right? Like ownership is possession. Like it's mine. That thing, this belongs to me. I'm going to see it through. This belongs to me. I'm going to.
Yeah. And for me, that's sort of where it always tied back to that, like, till the job is done, to the when Ford first brought up, and I wasn't familiar with it, about the dirty hands, clean money. You know what I mean? Like all those things that this is the work we do. It's blue collar work. It's hard. It's rough. There's unknowns. There's a lot in your way, but you show up and you do the best you can every single day, and you own that whole process that is yours. Yeah. And you get the work done that you can get done.
Well, and leadership is funny, right? Because, everyone thinks that you've got to have a title that makes you the leader. And I think really, we're always looking for people to lead exactly where they're standing, right? Can you lead from the cab of a rock truck? Absolutely. Can you lead from the side of the trench with your shovel? Absolutely. So I don't think that it's a title. It's a mentality. It's a behavior for sure.
Well, and in fact, if if you're the leader because you told them you're the leader, then you're not the leader.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You have to be the leader because you acted like a leader, and then everyone realized, like, oh, he's the leader. And what we were trying to get to, I think, was a team of people who all were trying to do that same thing, but each of their piece, and then try to clearly define, like, this is your responsibility, and then allow them to own it as an individual and as a group, right? Yeah. Because that's the other thing is, it's not just, Bob Smith acting like an owner. It's, did Bob Smith and the crew that he was working with act like owners that day, right? Like, did they perform like the owner would have performed?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it is an individual, definitely. but every person has, to some extent, an obligation to act as an owner.
Right. And when everybody does that and pulls in the same direction, that's when you see teams really excel.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? We have people that do it in the office. We have people that do it in the field. We have people that do it in the shop or in equipment, and everywhere else. And we've always been, Ford has preached that we don't call out people necessarily. I mean, not that we don't say people's names or anything else, but we try to talk a little bit in generalities when we're talking. But if you're sitting here listening to the podcast and you're a Berg employee, right? You're not just somebody who listens because I don't know why you want to hear Brian Ford and I talk, but you do.
We still haven't figured that out.
We still haven't figured it out. But, you're somebody here in your mind right now that you're probably thinking of somebody. You're like, who really does that is this person, and I probably wouldn't disagree with you. Like if we said, hey, send in who you think acts like an owner, we could get a bunch of different people, but I don't think we'd be surprised with anybody we got.
Yeah, that's probably true. And I think we'd all come up with similar names.
Yeah.
Right. If you were all gonna, privately write down a name and toss it in a basket, and I think you'd end up with several of those slips of paper saying the same names.
Yeah, and ironically, I don't think you would. I think you might be surprised at some of the names. Not surprised at the names you get. You would know you were going to get those names.
Sure.
But it's not like they're going to say oh, Dan and Brian, they act like owners. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But that's not who. If we're having a draft, that's not my first pick. Sorry, Brian, but we're not my first pick. You know what I mean? There's a couple guys that I really believe in, but I feel like you could have an effective draft and get a couple rounds deep. You know what I mean? Where we have good people out there at multiple levels.
Yeah. No,
the cool part is too that we have some people right now that when they started out, I know one particular person, when I first was on the job with them, I was not overly for a couple of days. Now I got a couple of day glimpse, and over time they've really stepped up and become one of those type of people that would probably be on that list. So that's really neat to see because, in the first 90 days, that wasn't they hadn't found their ground yet, or they hadn't found their spot where they were doing it at yet. But then once they got going, I've really been impressed. Not just turnaround, but maybe just they've been able to show that leadership. And when they first started, they weren't at that place yet for themselves. And so that's really a cool thing. I think two things that when we have failures in this, we have two types of failures. Some is that people just don't want that level. And then there's some people that take it so seriously that it overwhelms them. I mean, I think there's a couple of people that we can all think about that have been with our team before that are no longer with us, that literally they were doing it. And when you're doing it and you're being that, shame on us for not checking in, but we just assumed that they were good and they were just taking it too much to heart and couldn't figure out the outlet to be able to manage it and actually have had, to go into other type of work just because it was just too much of a burden for them. They couldn't figure out how to manage it appropriately. And we weren't aware that they were having that struggle because they were getting it done. And on the outside, everything looked appropriate, but on the inside, things were crumbling for them.
Yeah. I think that when you find people who are naturally want to do this, want to behave this way, the biggest failure that we've had as an organization is when we don't show them how to act as an owner. We don't give them the right examples, the right mentors, the right situations to show them how to act that way. We all know the stories, right? We've been here long enough. We've seen the good ones come and go. We've seen the bad ones come and go. So when you're talking about an example like that, Ford, where somebody who is probably doing it right and wants it, and then just kind of becomes overwhelmed or consumed by the responsibility. That's probably a good example of maybe we did not develop them or show them how to handle that appropriately, or maybe we did not, invest in the time spent with how quickly they were given the responsibility that matched their desire to act as an owner, things like that.
So, what I think could be interesting, and I don't. We talk about that. Nobody's perfect.
Sure.
But we're all flawed. But that we don't have all the tools we need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the toolbox, my toolbox is not full of every tool I'm going to need. There are
Right.
certain things that happen that I don't have a tool to deal with it. And so I just try and figure it out and get through the best I can. And that happens often. So one of the things I think that's a problem is that create, or I should say that can create that problem, is Ford, I believe, and I know I do it, I won't speak for you, but I'll just speak for me. When I start to really feel the pressure of acting like an owner, of trying to do the right thing, of trying to act in a way that is appropriate and respectable, and I'm doing what it should be done, and I'm representing Ford in the way I perceive he's to be represented, there's not a lot of people for me to get. Now, that's not even fair. It's that I don't go out and ask for help, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, like, okay, I have to own this. So it is my job to find the solution. And if I don't have the solution, I just need to look harder, right? Like it's got to be here. I'm just not seeing it. And I think that there is a risk that we don't really have a way to explain, because as a rule, a lot of owners do that. You know what I mean? A lot of owners look internally and say like, okay, what is the answer, right? Like it is my job to get us to some point and it doesn't matter whether we're talking about trying to find work or trying to, reconcile accounts or trying to put in a pipe run. Like it doesn't matter if you get to a point where you're like, God, this is very difficult. I don't know what to do. As an industry, we're not great at saying like, hey, can anyone help me with this? Like I'm stuck. And I'm stressed about it, and this is bothering me, and we just don't talk about it. And it's why there's a lot of issues in our industry that we know about, that we talk about. Like when you have the suicide week thing, we talk about it for 4 days, right? Like it's because some terminal point where they just can't deal with the stress anymore. And that's what came to mind with a couple of the people that we're talking about, right? And I know who you're talking about, whether it's one of 3 or 4 people, and I know who you and Ford are talking about. And with that, like, there was no signs. Like, it's one of those things that, like, you just didn't see it coming.
Right.
They seemed fine, right? But, like, actually, did they seem fine? Or, you know what I mean? Or did they actually say something that I just missed? And I think that's a struggle in Act Like an Owner and the autonomy we give, is that we want people to own it. But then when they own it, how do you then have an open conversation where you say, I need help? And so I feel like we've tried to say, like, guys, if you need something, you just need to tell us and we'll help. But that was a learned behavior, I think, over the last, decade. That it wasn't something that we thought at the beginning. We didn't even think about it, really.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, and
well, and also, from my perspective, like, there wasn't any of that stuff. So, I miss the signs when there is those things, because that just wasn't, the way to succeed was forward. There was no option, and so there just wasn't that ability to notice those things.
No, and that's exactly it.
And,
so, like, if Ford's the leader, if Ford's the leader, that's what we're following.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And Ford, would you say? So I definitely agree, and I think that each of us approaches circumstances, and you think about the last couple of years here with different things that we've been through as an organization and as individuals. And I think we've all kind of got that like, well, the only way is through, right? Like there's no like exit path here. There's no get off the off ramp and find the easy path. Like the only way is through. So we're going through. Before, would you say, like, you've gone probably through more than a dozen variants of this, and here at Berg and some of the other things that you've done. Like, would you say though, like, this is just like outside perspective, so maybe I don't mean to put you on the spot, owner,
but we're going to.
But we're going to. No, but have you always thought like, hey, I've got to get this done myself? Or for me, it looks like you've a lot of times said, like, I need to find people with the skill sets to get this done. But I don't, I've only been around 10 years. So like, I'm trying to think, like, was there a flip there that happened at some point? Or were you always kind of like, let's find the people, let's find the right skills to get these things done?
Well, I think there's a double-edged answer, just because the fact that when we got to the appropriate place that we could have the people that can have the skill sets, then it was time to bring them in.
Yeah.
I think the first, 10 years or before we had the team, it was just figure it out. I think that, some of my upbringing, as much as we joke about it, like it just don't fit into me. So it doesn't even come across the thought for me, because that's how it's been. But then once we got to the appropriate spaces where we could bring in the resources for certain things, then we did. And I think back to a couple of years ago, could have been longer than that at this point, but pre-COVID. But we tried to do some trainings and some stuff for like leadership and different things. And unfortunately, the options we had that we presented to the team that they went through, they really didn't get the value out of it, or it didn't connect with them in the way that was useful. I remember them going through like ABC classes and like young leaders, emerging leaders. And I think we put like 6 or 10 people through that, and got to the end and kind of asked them all about it. And none of them really had anything profound or felt that it was useful. And so I think we went away from it. I mean, sometimes you have to keep trying, but it's just like, all right, we sent that big group of people through there. And I mean, at that point, that's probably a quarter of the team, and nobody came out being like, wow, I really, maybe it's just the mentality. They don't want to admit it, but in reality, it was like, nobody said that they found value in it. So if nobody finds value in it, we're not going to continue with something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that, like, there aren't a lot of classes that can prepare you to be a good leader, right? Or to act like an owner. You can get a lot of skills, you can get a lot of education from those types of things, but I think that you've got to experience what it's supposed to look like in order to be able to duplicate it at times, or to do it on your own. We've said it here on this podcast before. I think like one of the keys where we've seen it work really well in our organization is when people are given the opportunity to see what success could look like, or what getting through a challenge could look like. And people in those environments, when they're given the chance to do it, and before they're required to do it, usually have a better success rate. Because they've been standing next to somebody who got through it, or showed them how to get through it, or they watched get through it, right? And so I think about some of the best examples we have in our organization. Not all the good examples, but some of the best examples are exactly that. Like people who were given the opportunity to succeed before it was their responsibility to succeed.
Well, I definitely agree. And I think one thing is for sure that, sound old and curmudgeon here, but so be it. Like, look around. Like, if you're not sure what to do, look for somebody you think is doing it the right way and pay attention. Don't look down at your phone. Look at, there's somebody around you at all times, whether inside the company, outside the company, someone that's your family friend. But we all know somebody that, like, you're like, that person has it together.
Yeah.
And just watching them, I mean, you can have a conversation with them, or you can just watch them and just watch how they prepare, watch how they execute, all those things. And, that's a great way to learn. I mean, I'm sure on every crew there's someone that you could, like, you're like, I wonder what I should do here. Watch somebody else doing it. And, you can tell right away if it's doing it the right way or the wrong way. Not saying like the technical piece, but, you get a feel for how things are supposed to flow. And you get a pretty quick idea if it's going the right directions.
Well,
I think a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, I was going to say, along those lines, there's a few things that came to mind. One is, I think that one of the issues we had when we tried to send people to that class was that we were sending them and they already had what was trying to be taught in that class. Like, it was like the future leaders, but these were already leaders. Like we had already tested them out to a point. They had already run some work. So they were trying to help them with things that maybe they needed, but they had already done. So they had already developed a habit, or, so it's different. It's like, if you gave that class to a high school senior, like, well, maybe that could work. But when you give it to a guy who's already run 3 jobs and we're saying like, okay, you just need a little support. Well, I don't think we found what was needed, and I think we realized the only place we could find it was by turning to other people within our own organization and saying, we need you to really to support this person a little bit more, and to the person, you need to look to this person, you know. And I, you know, the other thing I was thinking about when Ford said that is, it is like you know, that you can't die here mentality, you know, that like that we're going to see it through. And so that puts additional stress because you're going to see it through. But be willing, be confident enough to ask or to look or to observe, you know. And Ford said, don't look down at your phone, look at the person next to you. But that was actually something that came to mind. The resources that are available to people now, you know, and I thought about like both you and Aaron, how you use, you know, YouTube or anything else. And like, you know, you would disassemble like, you know, a military aircraft carrier and try and rebuild it. And well, I could definitely do it. It's on YouTube and I just watch it step by step.
Instructions.
Right. But that still gets you through, and to a point, like that's acting like an owner. It's saying like, I don't have, this has to get done. I'm going to do it. Here's the best resource I can do it. And the last piece I thought about was there was a force main break in front of my house again. And Aaron, I told Aaron to send Ford the picture. Did Aaron send you the picture, Ford?
Yep.
She called me. She said, Dan, there are 12 men in yellow shirts in front of our house, all standing around a hole with one machine. She said, there's one machine, no truck. There's nowhere to put the dirt.
Well, they can't all be in machines. You don't want 12 machines there either.
Well, I realized that, but there was nowhere to dig it out to put it because there was no truck to put it in. There was no stone coming back in. There was no pipe, but there was 12 people.
12 guys, yeah.
And she was like, and they've been here for 4 hours. You know, she was like, this can't run this way. Yeah. And it was just the realization of, from the outside, as she's seen how construction runs and see, like, just start to know numbers. You know what I mean? Like, Aaron doesn't know how to do any function of what they were trying to do. But she knew from watching our own team over time, just from being on job sites when I would, you know, sneak through on a day I'm off, that this is what a job site should look like. And from me driving by, like if we're driving and I see a crew, I'm like, oh, this looks good, or that doesn't look good, you know, and make comments about it. So it's not rocket science. It's a willingness to be open and ask and see it. And that's how you sort of, that's another way you act like an owner, is to be interested.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about you there talking about how I like to, DIY whatever I can find on anything YouTube. But I think honestly, like stuff like that, you know, like the desire to, like, it's not even a desire to learn new things necessarily. It's a like growing up and being broke thing, right? Yeah. Like why, if I didn't figure out how to fix this, it just wasn't getting done. Yeah. So do I want it to work, or do I just want it to be a giant paperweight, you know? So
in that exact scenario,
I think broke is motivating at times.
Necessity is the mother of invention. So the other day I was, we had to start mowing the grass, right? It's that time of year. Yeah. And my front tires on my mower got dry rotted. They're old. It happens, right? And I knew it, and I was like trying to nurse them through because you and I are cheap. Sure. And so it like wouldn't inflate, and I was aggravated. So I said to it was, get me ratchet straps, and I'm like ratchet strapping the tire down to try and recreate to create the bead, so I can seal it, so I can put the tires on. So I like go get new tires, and I mowed the whole grass. As I'm finishing, I pull out, I blew the back tire off. I was like, and they just looked at me, and I was like, I acknowledge you're going to have to get new tires. It's fine. I'll take them off and get new tires. You know, but like just like that, like you
can probably find them on Facebook Marketplace.
You probably could find them on Facebook Marketplace. Yeah, somebody.
The other thing I thought about when you were talking Ford, I was going to say earlier, I think like you mentioned this. I don't think you said the word desire, but I think what you were alluding to a little bit is desire, and like the person has to want to take the next step, or want to be. I don't like to want to be the leader. Isn't necessarily the right thing. You don't have to want to be the leader, but you have to want the responsibility, the ownership, the knowledge of things. And it made me think about like how Heath. It made me think about Heath, right? And I'm talking about his son. So there's he's got access to the practice and the proving grounds, right? But that kid, just like he doesn't want to. He wants to be an operator, but he doesn't. You don't generally get to be an operator because some super complicated task was needed to be done with a machine that you've never used, and you were the only one standing there. So they said, "Cool, go jump in there and do that thing that no one else is here to do." You generally get to be the operator by acquiring the skills over time. And Heath would talk about how his kid would go in before work, go in after work, do things around the house, whatever, so that he could use the machines in an attempt to be comfortable with them, so that he could gain the knowledge, gain the ability, so that he could do the things that were required when they needed to be done, and have sort of like, practiced it, sort of rehearsed the skills necessary, so that when it needed them. And I think that that's just desire, right? I think that and that is maybe one of the attributes of acting like an owner.
Go ahead.
I think real quick, but I think one of the reasons why it's so difficult to get training on this per se is that this isn't something that can be taught.
Yeah.
We can give you the tools, or we can teach you how to document a job, or we can teach you, or someone can teach you how to, make sure your emails are right when you're documenting something, or, how to best move a yard of dirt. Like, we can teach all those things, but like you said, the desire or the want, that comes from inside the belly. Like, there is no, there's no way that, those are intangibles that are just not, you're not going to watch a YouTube video for 30 minutes and all of a sudden come out the other side and magically be doing it.
But do you feel like that this is one of those things that it almost doesn't make sense when I say it, but they can't be taught, but they can be learned? Like, if you have the desire to learn them, you can learn you can change your behavior, right? Like, you can change how you operate and what you do, because it may just have been something you weren't exposed to previously, but no one can teach you to do it. Like, because teaching to me is, I'm delivering something to you. It's not that but it can be received, but it can't be delivered. Like, the only way you're going to get it is if you go search it out and you internalize it and you make it part of you. And the person that you learn it from will have taught it to you, but you can't be taught that just because someone's talking at you and teaching you it.
Sure. No, I would agree. I would actually even say, like, maybe not even learned, but refined. Like, I think you have to kind of have it in you, and then have it shaped and molded and refined by the people that you've seen do it well and that are around you.
You know what could be really a flaw in my thinking?
Yeah.
Is that maybe it's the pure narcissism, but like, I think I have that desire. Like, I usually say it's that I want to win. Like, I want to succeed. And so that drives me to always want to do something more. So I almost look at it like you couldn't possibly not have it. You know what I mean? Like, but maybe that's a flaw in the thinking itself that creates a problem. Is that I look at it and say, like, well, it has to be here. Like, just look harder.
We just gotta pull it out.
We just gotta find. It's gotta be in there.
It.
But in other words, but to your point, maybe they don't. Maybe some people don't.
Yeah.
And then that
well,
and they might.
And I think everyone's probably got it, but it's probably not got it for the same things, right? If that's fair. Like, we're waiting for people to, like, step up and act like an owner here, because this is where, like, we can be passionate about this.
Yep.
Other people, this won't do it for them. They're never gonna find it. They're never gonna step out of their shell. They're never gonna want to take ownership. Yep. It could be a job, where, like, we'll spell it out because it's a bad word, but it could be a job for a lot of people, but it might not be something that they're.
That's a great point, so, honestly, because there's someone that comes to mind that, like, they would talk about video games, and they had so much passion about the video games and desire, like, wanted me to, and they might as well talk to a brick wall. Like, I was, this is not. I can't even believe I'm listening to this, but they didn't have it in other spots we needed it. You know what I mean? So, like, so to your point, they did have it.
They had it. It just wasn't. It just wasn't here.
It wasn't here, and it was never going to be here.
They just didn't bring it with them to work. So, that's probably a fair place to wrap it up. I don't know that we talked about anything.
I think we did.
But thanks for joining us today, folks. We hope you got something from this, and we hope you come back for another episode.